Welcome to another episode of our Eat and Drink Real Estate Podcast. My name is Scott Burgess. Today we are joined by our attorney and broker combo, Eron McCormick, attorney, Cathy Yanda, broker. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, Scott.
First question, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, just kind of joking around about it, but what really inspired you guys? What inspired you to become an attorney, to be a broker? Like, how did you get into this?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Cathy. Answer that first.
Actually, real estate had always been kind of a plan B, right? Well, I did some other things, right? So I did, I'm a Marine Corps veteran, so I served 8 years in the Marine Corps, active duty. And then I moved into public health, and I served both state, local, and I also worked for the federal government in public health for years.
Oh, wow.
And then I did consulting, infectious disease consulting throughout most of the U.S. and decided I got tired of traveling, so let me, go ahead with that license that I'd already studied for, and let's move into real estate. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Kind of an unnatural transition, but the travel part you got down.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Eron?
Well, growing up, I watched This Old House, but jokingly, I knew I don't have those type of skills, so I thought I'd try my hand at going to law school, and I always liked the idea of investing in real estate, so I know I wanted to have more of a practice where I wasn't necessarily always going to court, and like the idea of growing my wealth through real estate, so I figured I'd go to law school and start a practice as a real estate attorney, and here we are. So, and I've liked it. I've worked with Citywide; they do a great job. So, practice is growing. So, it's kind of the reason I did that. The other areas of law weren't really that interesting to me. I like a transactional practice, so real estate made sense.
Yeah, and a lot of attorneys, the transactional nature of it is just kind of, it seems to be different, right? It mixes it up a little bit as opposed to strictly going in front of a judge all the time.
Correct.
Well, it's a unique kind of blend. I mean, how in the world did you guys connect? It doesn't seem to be anything in the
I'll start that one. Yeah, we're a lot different. Our backgrounds are a lot different, for sure. So when I first got into real estate, I reached out to everybody I knew, and not only my small sphere, because I traveled a lot, so I didn't have very much of a local, lot of local friends, and I didn't grow up in Chicago. I grew up in Ohio, so that's a little different, right? And so I reached out to everybody I knew through LinkedIn.
Oh, and wow. Okay.
Then that's where you pick up. Right?
Yes, the power of social media, or X now, not LinkedIn.
That's why we're here.
But so the firm I was at, where I was of counsel, I was introduced to that firm through a realtor mentor of mine. His daughter was a partner at that firm in Naperville, and the managing partner owner of the firm said I should go meet Cathy. Mm-hmm. She sent out a LinkedIn message that she was new to Baird & Warner, and we met at the Oak Park Starbucks, and she's a Marine Corps veteran, or as my buddy who's in the Navy jokes, always once a Marine, always a Marine. Yeah. So I'm big into helping veterans, giving back to the first responder community. My brother's a veteran, and it's a special place in my heart for veterans. So naturally, we, I think, clicked and been working together ever since.
Oh, fantastic! It's a very interesting kind of pull through together, to get you in front of each other.
Yeah.
With that said, this market obviously has been talking about goofy kind of connections and whatnot. What sort of misconceptions are out there about this market? You hear a lot of, if you wait long enough during the week, whatever you heard at the beginning of the week, there'll be a counterpoint at the end of the week. What kind of misconceptions do you see out there that you'd like to address?
Great question. So I say the biggest one is that you're never going to find a 100% perfect home.
Oh, okay.
Right? You're going to find a home that you love and that has potential to be your 100% perfect home. But it could be a 90% home in the beginning, or an 80% home in the beginning.
Okay.
And also another misconception is that every home available to buy is listed online, and they're not. Right? You can find a lot of homes that are listed online, say Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, and over 16,000 more websites. Right? So you're going to find a lot of homes. But what you might not find is that home that's not ready to actually be seen by you.
Okay. So, and what do you mean by that?
So there's homes that are in the private listing network. So that's what realtors call it anyway.
Okay.
So they're homes that are getting ready, or maybe they're ready, but the homeowner doesn't want to show it until, let's say, after the Super Bowl, because a lot of people don't want to show homes until after the Super Bowl.
Yep.
But if you have a relationship and you have a really good realtor, local realtor, who can pick up the phone and call the other agent on the other line, on the phone, then you may be able to get in and get that home.
Wow.
You may be the only people that ever saw that home. And I've had clients who've bought multiple homes that way.
Oh, wow.
So we did one in Franklin Park.
Oh, yes.
Then a couple others. We did Plainfield, Joliet, where we've seen those homes, and they were perfect homes for them.
So it's not always kind of a linear, like, hey, I saw it from an ad from a broker, and then I went and saw it, and it was great, and I placed an offer, and
Right.
there's just some other ways to get there.
There are. There's also, our office is, we do more homes, we sell more homes in the area that we service, right? So in the
Okay.
Oak Park area. And we're going to talk. I mean, the agent's going to talk with each other and say, hey, I've got this home. It's not in the private listing network yet, but, it's coming up. It's available, and maybe we can get in to see it.
Do you feel sometimes maybe by talking about that, like, hey, I got something that, in my opinion, they got to do X amount of dollars worth of work, and then all of a sudden you get lucky and somebody says, well, I got somebody that's looking to maybe find a rehab type opportunity or something like that. Does that?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
What percentage would you say that happens in a year? I mean, is this just like 1 in a million, or is this?
No, I would say, probably at least 10 to 20%.
Oh, wow.
That they're
Okay.
sold before they get into the actual market. So, yeah,
So it does help to talk to other people, and just
it does.
one of the advantages of obviously going to an agent,
Yeah.
right? And I
Right.
know that's what would you say is the biggest reason for somebody to start dealing with a broker? If somebody says, you know what, everything's online, like you alluded to, it's on the internet, I'll find it.
Right.
What do you say to those people? What do you tackle, or how do you tackle that?
You're going to be limited to what you can see, and you're going to be going into seeing the same homes that everybody else is, right?
Okay.
And you don't have anybody on your side who's going to be able to help you negotiate, who's going to pull comps and say, okay, that home that you just saw that was perfect is way overpriced, or maybe it's a steal. Right?
Yeah, okay.
I've shown homes in the last year that were listed for with 3 bedrooms, and we go in there and they're actually 4-bedroom homes. And
Really?
because a lot of people will choose to use a discount brokerage or list them themselves, and they don't complete all the paperwork correctly. And so when they list it online, a lot of times those are going to come up as, okay, that's got a basement. There really isn't a basement in this house. Or, so you never know what's going to turn up. Yeah.
Eron, is that something too where you kind of see when they're negotiating the contract, sometimes those little quinky dinks or whatever you want to call them will show up, and you have to address those from maybe a legal standpoint? Is that?
Yeah, I would say the more things change, the more they stay the same. As I'm sure you remember, back in the day, you went to a realtor's office and there was a binder filled with houses, or you looked at the Sunday Circular and found houses.
Yeah.
But so where Cathy stands out, as well as some of my other agents, is not all, but a lot of my agents, they'll work with the client and help them negotiate an offer, find something on the PLN like Cathy's talking about. But I think a lot of clients just think, I'll just look on, fill in whatever website you want, and that will get the job done. It's not. It's the personal touch that gets it done. Clients will ask me questions about value of a home, and I'll refer them back to the agent because that's not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is how to take care of the transactional legal aspects of the deal, whereas your agent's going to know how to do a CMA to figure out the value of the home. A good agent's they're not going to drive around because they don't get paid unless the deal closes. They're not going to want you to spend money on a home that doesn't make sense because they're still in appraisal in most cases.
Sure.
And so it's in their best interest to make sure you're putting in the right kind of offer, buying the right kind of home. And so I think that is true. The other thing I'll say when we're talking about things in the market is I'm also licensed in Wisconsin. It's not just unique to our market. Buyers and sellers in Wisconsin are always concerned, is it the right price I'm selling for? Is this the right way to buy a home? So it's not just here, and it's always, there's another home that came up. Even with new construction, the clients are saying, I found a different home with a different builder. Can I get out of this contract?
Yeah.
And so people say, it's just a real estate contract. It's still a contract. Even if it's a 7.0 form or some other builder's form that's being used, it's still a legally binding contract after those contingencies are up. So you have to keep that in mind.
Now, you've brought up some interesting things between the two of you as far as maybe not pitfalls, but just things to be aware of. Do you have kind of an overarching strategy or a way that you're going to tackle these things up front? Is that something you guys think about?
So I always look at it as one size fits one. So each client is totally different, right? So your needs or Aaron's needs, if you're buying or selling a home, are not going to be like anybody else's. So our goal is really just to make things as simple as possible and to meet whatever needs you have. There was a client that we had talked about, maybe sharing that story, is we have a Marine Corps client. Mm-hmm. He was retired. He still is retired. Right? And we found out as we went through the process that he'd had a divorce in Hawaii.
Oh, yes.
Ah, okay.
Right? Yeah, and he didn't have a copy of that divorce decree anymore. Because think about how many times that he's moved around.
Sure.
Right? So, Eron, you tell the rest of the story.
As they say, your net worth, or your net work is your net worth.
Ah.
And so, luckily for me, I went through my alumni database and found an attorney in Hawaii that was not that far from the courthouse.
Oh, wow.
And so, jokingly, they say mainlanders call Hawaii, and people in Hawaii don't like mainlanders. So when I called the courthouse, I didn't really get anywhere. It was going to take about 2 to 3 weeks to get a copy of that divorce decree and marital settlement agreement, the judgment of dissolution, everything. So I called the attorney, who's a graduate of my law school, probably graduated, I think it was 10 or 12 years before me, and he walked over to the courthouse and got it on his lunch break.
Wow.
And that was the difference between closing on time and not.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
We had a plan B, and that was to reach out to other Marines who were stationed there and get them to do the same thing. But this worked out so much better.
Plan C, I got to go.
I know. Oh, that was mine. I was like, I'll volunteer.
I'll need a round trip ticket on United first class. I'll take care of that for you.
Like, I'll take one for the team.
Closing costs. Right?
$8,000.
So when you have those types of interesting things that'll come up, and obviously that's more of a geographic thing, but it's nonetheless inspiring. But how do you negotiate these deals? Is there language that you use, or certain things within the contract that maybe you specifically do that other brokers or attorneys don't do? Is that part of that process too?
Really, it's about listening. So I like to listen to what you're telling me as we go in to see a home, right? And there's one story that we had with a veteran client as well.
Okay.
And he is disabled, right? He's a disabled veteran, but you wouldn't know that by meeting him. Right? Okay. And showed him a home, met him on a day kind of like it was on Friday with all that snow, right? Yeah. They had a new baby. I'm showing the home to them, to the family, and his mother-in-law, and we're going to go see some homes. And so as we're seeing them, he's walking around, he's looking at different things of what the rest of the family is, right? Okay. And we get to the basement, and he just stands in the corner, and he says, this is not going to work for me, right? Wow. And to me, as a veteran, I knew what that meant. That meant this home is not going to work for me. I need to be able to get out of the basement easily. I have, I didn't know at that time he was a disabled veteran, but he has PTSD. Sure. So it made sense for him to want to get out of that home and make it easy for his family in the future, right? But that client actually came as a referral. Mm-hmm. So you tell that part of the story.
Yeah, the client was working with another brokerage. They were losing homes, and then their buyer agency agreement had expired, and then they were looking for another agent. So I think I referred them, or was the lender that referred them? I can't remember. Mm-hmm. But I know we both worked and recommended Cathy to work with the client. And then they found the home they wanted. And I think the biggest issue was more so, not necessarily the agent, but the lender was just god-awful. Just didn't know what they were doing. And I kept telling them, this is how you should do things. Not that I'm a know-it-all, but they didn't know what they were doing. Wow. And kept coming with every excuse under the sun of why things weren't working. Well, it's because you're not doing the correct things. Right. And so, but it's a good story. It worked out in the end. You really helped their family, and they got into the home they wanted.
So we saw quite a few homes. Sure. And they found the home that they absolutely loved. Yeah. And it went under contract.
Fantastic.
We didn't have the top offer. Right? We had a backup offer because we're a VA loan. So sometimes, we have different contingencies, and sometimes our loans they look a little bit different with veterans, right? Okay. So we didn't have the top offer, but I stayed in touch with the realtor on the other side, and we talked quite often. And it came back around. And we actually ended up with the home. It never went back on the market. She called and said, "Are you still interested?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." All right.
And so that only came about because you're talking to that broker. Presumably he or she is talking with their seller to say, hey, I'm in communication with somebody that's serious, that really wants to do this. And then that kind of puts you in that lead position. Is that fair to?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
Wow.
And they love their new home. All right.
Well, fantastic.
And they've since had another baby.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
So what other, speaking of success stories like that, is there another, do you have like a really good, like kind of heartfelt, like, hey, took maybe a horrible scenario and turned it into like a closing?
Where do we begin?
We do.
Uh-oh.
So being a Marine, Marines celebrate the Marine Corps birthday.
Yeah.
All right? 10 November. Everybody knows that. If you're on social media, you don't know when the Navy's birthday is, or the Army, or the Air Force, or Space Force, or whatever, Coast Guard, but you know when the Marine Corps birthday is, all right? Because it's there in front of you everywhere, all right? Right? So the Marine Corps birthday is the 10th of November, but right, and Veterans Day is the 11th, so you can't close on Veterans Day, but we can close on the Marine Corps birthday.
Yeah.
So we have a family who we were going to close on the Marine Corps birthday. Like, why not, right? Okay, so we did the final walkthrough, and as we did the walkthrough, we noticed that there's a refrigerator that wasn't there before, the one that they had looked at that home when we had under contract. They had removed a refrigerator and put an older one in its place.
Oh, wow.
And that wasn't in our contract, right? So I go downtown and meet with a group of Marines, because that's what we do on the Marine Corps birthday, right? And I get a text from our client that says, you might want to come back, right? Because we have a problem. I'm like, okay, great. So you're at closing with them, and
it was a game of stall with the other attorney. He kept trying to argue every point that he could, but it went back to the documents construed against the drafter. So basically, meaning what's in the documents there, and we had an agreement, and we wound up getting them to pay for a new refrigerator because they didn't want to bring the other one back. Wow. And so it's a little bit of stand your ground, but just knowing how to have professionals that know how to use the documents that you have. I think a lot of attorneys just kind of try to get their client through the process because they don't want to
going through the motions.
Going through the motions essentially. But if you have a real estate attorney, they should know how to use the contract, know what the law says, know what the contract says, and be there to advocate for their client. There's a lot of attorneys, it's just a volume shop, in, out, in, out.
Okay.
But a good attorney will advocate for the client. So,
and you're able to use the documents to essentially fight for them. And hey, this is what we agreed to. It wasn't what we saw when we walked through this thing.
And the client was very happy.
Yeah, they're still very happy. So he downplays a little bit. I always tell people he's the nicest guy in the world until we need him to be a bulldog.
Yeah.
And then he is, because then it's full on bulldog. So I get there at closing, and we all walk out.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's true. I basically told the attorney that if we're not going to agree to this, we're leaving. I told everybody to get their coat and let's go.
Wow.
And so I guess the attorney and his client came to their senses because they paid us for a new refrigerator.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic.
I mean, as real estate attorneys, we're all trying to be reasonable. Everybody in the transaction is trying to get the transaction closed. People want to buy a home, sell a home. But sometimes people do things and they think they can just get away with it. Which goes back to an earlier question of, what are we seeing in the market? I think sellers still think it's completely a seller's market, like at the height of COVID, that everybody's trying to get a bigger house because they're working from home and the kids are being homeschooled. The buyers still think now it's a buyer's market. I don't think it's either a seller's or buyer's market. I think it's more of everybody has to really try to negotiate together. I don't think one side right now truly has the upper hand. Each side, again, has to try and negotiate together. I think it might become more of a buyer's market as we continue to move on, but right now I think it's a true 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting you say that. It with the overall idea being, let's get this closed. Right? I mean, I think that's a fair, if everybody's working from that standpoint, that seems to make a little more sense. So talking about the market, what sort of things do both of you do to kind of stay on top of the market, whether there's new trends or it's rates or it's, people are looking for this type of house or, these are the types of problems we see at closing where you're always having to advocate for your client. Is there certain things that kind of stick out or processes that you guys have for this?
I mean, I'm part of various bar associations. I'll read the Illinois State Bar Association articles. I work with various lenders. They send me daily articles or bullet points they have. I'll talk with my agents and see what they're talking about. I know you're part of, I'll let you talk about that, which organizations you're part of, and you send me information on that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that sets my practice apart is I try to think more like an agent, in the sense of a lot of attorneys, including myself, are not the greatest at marketing or not the greatest of trying to grow their practice and think about the practice in that way. But I try to think more of how can I also be more reasonable and work with the client and not always think like an attorney. Yes, you have to think as an attorney and represent the client as an attorney, but I think sometimes attorneys are always trying to act as an attorney, and that doesn't necessarily help the client. You have to also try to be reasonable. I guess what I'm really trying to say is we don't always need to litigate every matter.
Sure.
Try to be more reasonable, try to help the client. So in doing that, there's other ways to achieve things. And so sometimes just taking a simple approach will get the job done. Sometimes you see attorneys always wanting to fight for everything.
Yeah.
So
what other organizations are you part of that help you with this education? Eron's kind of
so
pointing you in that direction. What?
I think relationships matter. I think that's really kind of what you were saying is relationships matter, and who you work with matters, right?
Yeah.
So totally the local lenders. Local lenders are the best for what programs are out there, whether they're state programs, local programs, on what can help get a buyer into a home that maybe they wouldn't have had the down payment for, or maybe they didn't know there was a program they can save part of that money, right? So those are important. I also belong to a mastermind group. We meet at 7 a.m. 5 days a week, and there's about 40 people on that call from they're top agents from all over the U.S., right? And I have a coach, so which I believe is important. You should always, I believe you should always have a coach or a mentor that kind of, not only hold you accountable, but they're out there. I look at my coach as kind of, he talks to a whole lot of people, right?
Sure.
And he can talk to 15 people in the same day, and he can go gather information for me and bring it back when we talk.
Yeah,
right?
Okay. Use them as a resource.
I totally use them as a resource. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need somebody, because being a Marine, I don't really need somebody to say, you got to do this and this and this. I need somebody to say, what is out there, or I'm thinking about this, who's the best person?
Yeah.
Right? So when I've been thinking about, different things with growing my business or being able to help people, more people, or even maybe just be a better service. Like, so who do you know? And I
who, not what,
that.
Essentially, yeah.
It's totally a who, yeah.
Fantastic.
And I get referrals from around the country. So we get quite a few agent-to-agent referrals because I've built those relationships up. So those things are important, yeah. And, I follow some of the top real estate analysts in the country, and I'm on webinars with them usually once a week at least.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Are there any trends right now that are that pop to the top of mind, or is there?
Interest rates are going down, we hope.
Thank God.
We hope.
Yeah.
Created the interest rate gods weekly, so.
Yeah, I know you do, yeah. So, yeah.
So we talked about what are the benefits of being with an agent. You said it's kind of getting that inside track, or just having somebody that's listening to your needs and can maybe weed out and filter some things. Is there other tools that help you as far as, say, digital things? We have a lot of brokers on here talk about technology will help them, attorneys as well, try to get more from what you're doing, being more efficient. Are there things kind of along those lines that help or are part of your business for both of you?
Yeah, I would say AI is a big one right now.
Really?
And so you have to be careful what you're doing with AI. I know there's some law firms that, the bigger law firms are starting to add AI practice sections. So they have real estate, they have bankruptcy, they have corporate finance, these huge law firms. But you have to be careful what you're doing if you're going into one of these AI tools and doing that. But you also have to be able to adapt, improvise, and overcome. If you're just doing everything the same way, your practice might get a little stale. So, but I think at the end of the day, clients are still going to want somebody to sit there and explain docs to them, explain how to structure the transaction from a legal standpoint. So, are you going to want AI to defend you if you're charged with murder? I mean, no, but there's a place for AI. So I think that's one of the big things. And also there's other tools that attorneys use to help automate certain things, which do help keep costs down. So
Okay.
I don't think we need to be fearful of technology, but yes, there's a place and time for technology, but I think AI is one of the biggest things. And I would say talking to you, we talk a lot about AI and how to use that to help our businesses and help clients as well.
Right.
How does AI kind of filter into what you're doing? I mean, on your end of things.
Actually, over the weekend, we worked on an as-is flyer. So
Okay.
we're putting together a couple of brochures, one for sellers and one for buyers.
Okay.
And talk about what is as-is mean, and I just put it all into I put it into Bard and ChatGPT.
Okay,
I usually
yeah.
use both, and I put it in there and said, okay, can you just make this a little bit simpler?
Yeah.
Right? Because I tend to, be a little wordy at times. So like make this a little bit simpler, kind of, and also format it. Because I'm like, can you just format this as a brochure? And it does that for me,
Really?
which is really nice. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So
No.
essentially, you don't, it sounds horrible to say out loud, but you don't need to know how to be a publisher and maybe be the master of Microsoft Word or whatever it is. You literally throw it in there and say, hey, produce this for me.
Yep.
Do you, what percentage successful? I mean, are you 9 times out of 10 you read something like, hey, I can use this?
I always
Is it that kind of response? Or
Yeah.
what?
Well, I still tweak it. We
Sure.
still go over it to make sure that, this makes sense. I've used it to, let's say we want to compare market stats for maybe 3 or 4 different areas, right? Feed
okay.
that in there and it will actually put it into a spreadsheet format for me. That it makes it a lot easier to comprehend. Yeah.
I think you have to
Yeah.
first know about the topic before you just start having
Absolutely.
one of these systems
Yeah.
start spitting out something, because then it's
So you
like,
gotta proof it, yeah.
great, I have this document here, and I'll rely on that. I think that's very dangerous. And then
Sure,
also
sure.
sensitive information. I don't think you need to be putting that through
No.
Chat GTP or Bard or any of these other systems.
Okay.
That is going to be your downfall.
Yeah. So we also use when we use AI for we both use it for different things, but we
Yeah,
both
yeah,
use
yeah.
but we also do some other things. So we've done quite a few YouTube videos together, and I've done some separate. So
Yeah.
the whole YouTube channel that can walk buyers through different parts, of the process. The same with sellers.
Yeah.
What to look for during an inspection, what the 7.0 contract, the Illinois contract means.
Yeah.
Different sections of that. We've done that. Also I like brochures that are easy for people, but it's something that I can also give you a link to a Google Drive and say, okay, here's all the documents that you're going to need, or here's the buyer process, and you can just pull it up. You don't have to have it on paper.
So people can kind of do that maybe at their own pace. You might give them the overview of here's what's coming, but you say, hey, here's these 20 things. Look at them at your own pace.
Yep.
And as they get through them, you feel like they're getting the information that they should have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is there a way that you make sure, talking about the process, that make sure that your clients are getting, this might be oversimplifying, getting the best deal or however you want to say it. Do you have a way that you're looking out for your clients in that regard? Either of you or both of you? I mean, is that something like, hey, here's how I make sure that I've got a checklist or whatever it is, something like that? Is that part of the process?
I have SOPs, so standard operating procedures for
Yeah.
everything, every part of the business, as well as checklists. So
That's the Marine kicking in.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we'll go down through everything from, pre-listing appointments to listing your home to you're a buyer and now you're under contract. Let's do that.
Okay.
If I receive a referral from an agent, let's say in Tennessee that I took a couple of weeks ago, I have a checklist for that one too, because those are different.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it's literally everything. Sometimes we do events together, sometimes we do events separately, but I have an SOP for all of those. I have one for our Toys for Tots fund drive, right? So
Yeah.
we do that, and I have an SOP for that with a checklist. 45 days ahead of time, here's what we're doing. Here's what this person's doing.
So stages, like here you are, like you
Yes.
said, maybe we pre-listing, or now that we're listed, or now we're under contract, we got to do this.
Right, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also have a transaction coordinator who helps make sure that we all meet those timelines.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and she's amazing. Yeah.
Eron, do you like same thing, kind of processes or
Yeah, I
stages,
do,
or
and-
how do you?
And the biggest one is clients will, especially investor clients, I understand this. They're trying to get the most value they can out of every transaction, but I'm starting to see even more now in this market because of interest rates. Investors are trying to get $185 off title fees or $200 off title fees.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to explain to them, is $200 going to make or break your transaction? And long-term, 30 years, you plan on holding this as part of your retirement. And you're starting to see more of that. So I'm just trying to
Really?
explain, what you're paying for, why you're paying for it, why we're doing this, and asking them, for example, if they're saying, well, it goes back to I found a different house,
Okay.
Would a different house, you don't know the problems yet, is paying another $1,000 that the seller doesn't want to give you as a credit after your home inspection, does that make sense? Because that house might have more things. We haven't actually gone through a home inspection. So I just try to explain to them the value of, time and opportunity cost of going and looking at another house.
Why do you think they're coming to you with we'll say requests, but these conditions? Is it because of the market, or is there something out there that they're being told ahead of time that before they get to you, or is it just value?
Part of it is I think they're talking to their friends and family.
Okay.
The second thing is I do think it's because of the market, because at the height of COVID, over 2021, mid 22. I didn't have the same conversations. Prior to that, you'd have these similar type of conversations with it's $1,000, it's $200. That really stopped because buyers especially, knew that if they put up a fight, they might lose it, and you had a lot of appraisal gap addendums, so people were really willing, especially buyers, to just do what they needed to do to get the deal closed. You saw a lot more waiver of home inspections, a lot more as is. You're not seeing as many as is contracts now. But now the buyers again think that, I can just sign an as is and do whatever I want after I sign an as is. It's the intent to do as is, but not follow through with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anything else as far as educational stuff? Is there like classes you guys provide, maybe at the brokerage or with the law firm? Is it do you do types of things like that, like buyer seminars? You hear a lot of that stuff.
We don't do buyer seminars in the historical sense, I guess, the way everybody else is doing them. Then you show up and we do buyer seminars. So, but we've had the videos we have on YouTube actually goes through the buyer process.
Okay.
Right. So it's more of you can do this at your leisure.
Steer somebody to this resource and, hey, check this out. If you got questions, let me know, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Or, if I've got a new buyer that I'm working with, I might say, can you go watch this video and then we'll talk about it. Right? I'll answer any questions and I'll check back in with them after they've had a chance to do that.
We typically give them a week or something to watch this. And how long are the videos that you're steering? Is this 10, 15 minutes? Is this an hour? Is this
No, they're more like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
They're shorter.
Yeah. And you feel that kind of preps people. Does that get does that cover a lot of the stuff that you would want to cover anyways? Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say.
Okay. So what, I guess one piece of advice, as this market is shifting and there's talk about rates are getting better, you alluded to that earlier, and just you have these, different, needs for a buyer versus a seller. Is there one piece of advice for people that are kind of fence sitting, that read all this stuff and maybe aren't as dialed in as you two? Gosh, is this a good time to sell, or is this a good time to buy? Is there something that just you want to grab somebody and shake them and tell them this, or what? Yeah, what do you think?
One of the lenders you work with the lender too, but it's one of the lenders. And you know what I'm talking about. He sent an email once, and some of the other lenders have too. But the email he sent was, if I buy the house at $300,000 at a 7% interest rate, and I pay every payment on time and never pay any extra towards the principal, this is what the house costs. But if I buy the same house at $250,000 at a 9% interest rate or an 8% interest rate, I actually wind up paying more if I never refinance. We're assuming that we don't know what rates are going to be. So actually delaying, winds up costing you more. So potentially buying the home for a little bit higher price but a lower interest rate, it actually costs you less. So the issue you're hearing is, I want to see if rates go down. So you got to make the decision. Do you want to see if the rates go down? Also, the supply of homes, there's not as much of a supply of home. So if you found a home that you like and the payment will work for you, rates may or may not go down. You just have to make the decision.
Love the home, not the rate. We hear that a lot. Is that a fair thing to say, or is that kind of a trite expression? Is it
probably a trite expression?
Okay, it doesn't hold as much water as
Yeah.
So you feel right now is a good time to get into this market?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say that the biggest advice I would give somebody is to connect with a local expert.
Okay.
Somebody who understands the market, because each market is different. You go from one village to another village or one city to another one, and the markets are totally different. But you want to connect with a local expert who has what your needs are primary versus they need to have a paycheck, right? And that's important.
Sure.
Because I see a lot of realtors, it's more like, I really need this to close.
Mm.
And I'm like, but your client doesn't really want this house, or this isn't, is that the best thing for them, right?
Yeah.
To sell right now. And maybe it isn't. I've got clients that they're like, we're not ready. And I'm like, I totally get it.
Yeah.
And I have others, I talked to a buyer over the weekend and they wanted to see something. I'm like, okay, but are you ready? And she's like, we're not really quite ready. So there's no reason to really go see the home until
Sure.
they are really ready.
So you could actually close on something.
But I'm like, just keep sending me the ones that you really like, because that helps me out a lot.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. But you need a local expert. Oh.
So local.
Local.
I mean, we hear that all the time, but it.
You hear that with lenders too. I mean,
Yeah.
when you've got a local lender who picks up the phone during normal working hours or on the weekend, or versus you have a lender who's in Detroit or Columbus, Ohio, or Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
They're a little harder to
Michigan.
work with. Or anywhere in Michigan.
That sounded negative.
No, it's just a little harder.
Yeah.
It's harder because let's say if you wanted to make an offer on a home and there were multiple offers and we submitted that offer on a Sunday, and if the seller's agent can't call your lender because they're not back in the office until Tuesday because today is a holiday,
Yep.
you're probably out of the market and you probably didn't get that home. Yeah. Whereas a local lender, because of the relationships they have, they could see you at the grocery store. They want to be more attentive to the fact that I could see you at the grocery store and I'm going to pick up the phone.
And it's interesting because we have had other brokers on here that do talk about that relationship, and it might sound trite, but it really is important that if you have somebody that can tell you, here's the offers, here's how we want to see them structured, and if you as the broker, sometimes you've got to tell people, maybe beat them over the head, is listen, if I need 10 things from you, give me all 10.
Yeah.
Don't give me 9 and then I'm trying to explain something to the other broker. I mean, you've come across that, right? Where somebody's done that to you and it's like, I need this piece of information before I can even talk to the client or the attorney and make sure this thing comes together. Is that a fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other piece of advice I give clients is, and it sounds ridiculous, but if you're saving $5 a month, which again we all want to save as much as possible, versus paying another lender $5 a month more, or their lending institution, but they're going to do a better job and you're not going to have problems at closing, because you and I both know we've seen closings where the wire hasn't gone out. It's Friday at 4, the wire still hasn't gone out.
Yep.
Okay, documents have to be changed because the lender has spelled the wife's name wrong or the husband's name wrong, or forgot to include necessary things, or the closing instructions are changing, or the information on the loan application is incorrect, or whatever. Is that really worth the $5 a month? Or now we're doing a dry closing and it's a holiday today and we closed on Friday and now you're not getting home till Tuesday and your stuff's on a van with the movers
out in the parking lot. What do I do?
And they're putting it in storage, and every day they're holding it in storage. It's $300 a day, and it's just, and your kids, whatever is on there, and now the kids don't have it. Like, was that worth it? Was that worth it?
Yeah.
So think about that too.
Yeah.
That's interesting, and that's where, hopefully and theoretically, that's where you guys come in, and you're steering your consumers, your clients to, this is why I've chosen this individual.
Yeah.
Is that a fair?
Yeah,
Is that a fair?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what other things, we've talked enough about real estate, what other things in the community, I know you guys do a lot of that stuff, and we've worked together on some things. What things out there do you like to transition? I know you talked about you're a Marine, Eron doing first responder stuff. What sort of things out there in the community you guys really like to be a part of and participate with?
Well, this is the second year in a row that we're sponsoring the First Look for Charity with the 100 Club of Illinois.
Wow, what's that?
So the 100 Club of Illinois, they help first responders, families who've died in the line of duty, so firefighters, paramedics, police officers, and so every county has a 100 club. There's cities that have 100 clubs.
Okay.
And so in the first 24 hours after it's confirmed that, unfortunately, in the line of duty, first responders passed, they'll bring money to the family right away. They'll help with the family's mortgage. They'll help with the college or expenses for the children. And then if mom and dad were dependent of the first responder, they'll help with that. And so it's an organization I like to support.
Wow.
Raises money. The Auto Show First Look for Charity also raises for other organizations, but I choose to sponsor the 100 Club of Illinois. There's also other organizations I support that are for military and veterans. what Cathy does.
That's fantastic.
We also like to sponsor the Chicago Police
Yeah.
Marines.
The Chicago Police Marine Corps League.
Okay.
Right? So
Seems like a natural one, right?
I know, right? It's a philanthropic group, and we get together and we raise money, and then we support local veterans, whether it's
like down payment assistance type things, or is it more anything?
More of a, let's say if you needed help paying for a funeral, but we also do other things like help pay for housing. But also what we did during COVID and what we're still working on is you've heard of the shots that the military veterans will do for PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done a number of those that we've been able to pay for veterans.
Wow.
So we do that. So I think we raised probably about $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
That is fantastic.
And then we pretty much give all that money back into the community. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
congratulations to you both. That's absolutely super. So, Eron, tell me, what sort of information do you use to help keep clients informed of what's going on in the market or maybe trends that are out there?
Well, besides keeping up on my CLEs and other attorney resources that I use, just like Cathy said, there's various sources. So whether it be forums or blogs or the information I get from lenders on a regular basis, those are the type of things that I use. I try to also think like a realtor too, so I look at what information they have. I'm also part of the Main Street organization of realtors. It's an affiliate organization for the attorneys, and so they'll send daily news blogs, and the National Association of Realtors. I have an affiliate member with them as well, so I'll read their information and try to pass that on to clients.
Kind of keep that in the mode of how the transaction's going and how does what you're doing relate to the
Correct, and how those changes affect the client.
Okay. Cathy, so what other educational items do you have that maybe you try to get with your clients and help inform them?
So actually there's something I've got in the works, and I'm putting together a brochure for veterans.
Okay.
It's actually probably about a 30-page booklet on how to do home loans, how to do your veteran home loans from start to finish, on what you need to apply, down to what happens in the middle, right? And the fact that you have to pay, the seller has to pay for the termite inspection in Illinois, all the way down toward closing.
So what the buyer can expect to be
what the buyer can expect, yeah.
questioned for,
Mhm.
yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So
And
that's
when do you think, is that something you're going to have out this year? Is that something that's coming this month? What do you...
in the next 60 days.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to seeing that.
Thank you.
So as far as how to get a hold of you, Cathy, what is the best way to get a hold of you? And then Eron, how do we get a hold of you?
So just give me a call. Send me a text. 77.
Proof's in the pudding. Call the
Yeah.
cell phone, right?
That's it. It's like you call or text. That's probably it.
What's your cell?
773-315-7005. That's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Eron?
847-284-0539 or McCormickFirm.com.
Wow. So we've got some great information. We got cell phone numbers. That's easily worth the price of admission. That's fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming by today and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for hosting.